The Moto G and Moto E are two budget Android phones from Motorola. In this video we'll see how the phones compare with each other. The important deciding point between these two phones is the price. In the UK, the SIM-free Moto G 8GB edition costs £130 and the Moto E 4GB costs £80. Both of these phones have a solid feel, which is impressive considering the price. The Moto E is slightly thicker than the Moto G, and this is pretty noticeable, but it's no real problem and it makes gripping the phone easier. The buttons are all located in the same place in both phones. The buttons are thin but are easy to click. I found the Moto E had stiff buttons, but that might be a fault in this individual phone. The Moto G has a front-facing 1.3 megapixel camera, which the Moto E does not have. They both have a notification light though, which looks pretty cool. The back cover of both phones are removable, so you can interchange it with different colored back covers to suit your taste. The battery is however non-removable. Both the phones feature a 5 megapixel camera at the back. The Moto G has a slightly bigger 4.5-inch screen compared to the Moto E's 4.3-inch screen. Both of these sizes are perfect for comfortable use, not too big or small. The Moto G has a higher 720p HD resolution, which I'd argue is pretty noticeable. When you have these phones side by side together, you notice that their Moto E has a slightly blurry screen due to the lower resolution compared to the sharp screen of the Moto G. This isn't a big problem unless you plan to do a lot of web browsing on the Moto E. Both screens are bright and vivid and the viewing angles are good. The Moto E features a dual-core processor, whereas the Moto G has a quad-core processor. To my surprise, there is no notable difference in performance when it comes to day-to-day activities. Both phones feel snappy going from screen to screen on Android. The phones both seem to run smoothly when it comes to 2D games. You do start to see that the Moto E slows down slightly. This is only really noticeable when you have the Moto G nearby. 3D games are similar, both of them run the game smoothly, but the Moto E does slow down very slightly now and then. The game we're playing is Dead Trigger 2 with graphics set to low. Both phones feature 1GB of RAM, which is more than enough for multitasking. The Moto G comes in 8GB and 16GB versions, and the Moto E only comes in 4GB. Here I'd argue that the Moto G has a disadvantage. If you're like me and take a lot of pictures and have a large music collection, then you'll soon realize that 8GB is not enough, especially considering the Android system takes a lot of this memory also. Now the real problem is that the Moto G does not have a micro SD card slot, so when you're out of memory, you're out of memory. The Moto E on the other hand does have a micro SD card slot, so you can expand memory up to even large amounts like 64GB for as little as £30. The Moto G has a 2070 mAh battery, whereas the Moto E has a 1980 mAh battery. Both of these are fantastic and they can easily last longer than a day with moderate to high usage. The Moto E actually lasts longer than the Moto G despite the smaller battery, probably to do with the fact that a dual-core processor uses less power than a quad-core. The rear-facing camera is similar on both of these phones. However, the Moto G has autofocus and flash. Personally, I think that both of these cameras are pretty poor, but it's justified by the cheap price of the phone. The Moto E's lack of flash is clearly visible when it comes to low-light photographs. The pictures taken during the day are okay on both phones, but the lack of autofocus is pretty noticeable. Like I've said before, there isn't many special features on the budget Moto phones. Motorola has given us the best of the essentials at a low price. Both of these phones run very stock Android 4.4 KitKat, and we have been promised an update to 5.0 Lollipop. The stock Android is a good thing, as it means both phones run very smoothly. Both of these phones have Gorilla 3 glass, which protects it against scratches and the glass shattering. Both also have a hydrophobic coating, which means that the handsets are resistant against water to an extent. The Moto E features front-facing speakers, which the Moto G does not. The sound isn't necessarily very loud, but the audio is clear, plus it avoids the problem you have with the Moto G sometimes when you mistakenly cover the speaker with your hand whilst you're playing a song. Both of these phones are great value for money. The only important features which I find are lacking in the Moto E is a higher resolution screen, front-facing camera and flash. For £50 more you get all these features in the Moto G. But this is just for my personal preferences. Chances are you may not even use the camera much. So if you're willing to sacrifice on these features, then the Moto E is the way to go.